The story you're about to see is true. Names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Let's fuck!
Потому что от вас становится лучше. Поэтому, если Россия перейдет на бесконечную энергию, то и первое это сделает, одна из первых стран, то и пытаюсь донести до людей правду. Это ресторан в Москве, если я был маленький, если я был в первом классе. Вернуть им.
6 years ago, I partook in what you could consider the greatest bank robbery of the 21st century. Now, when I was a young man, I'm talking about early 20s, when you're a 22-year-old man, you really got two options, right? You can either become a mechanic, or you can figure out your means of income through illegal methods. You would look at college and you'd think to yourself, you know, what kind of Nancy is going to college to learn about Beowulf? I mean, what are you gonna run a nail salon? What are you gonna do with that? You're gonna go be a hairdresser? Come on. Thanks to the statute of limitations, I am allowed to tell you this story without having to worry about any kind of, jail time in my future. That's what's great about this country is, after a little while, technically, nothing's illegal. I could tell you right now that I was the one to kill Kaylee Anthony. I shouldn't be making those jokes. Not in a post James Gunn America. This is risky business here. Risky business. Reminds me of Tom Cruise. Reminds me of my Eyes Wide Shut video where a bunch of Pizzagate people are attacking me. I can't be joking about murdering children. These are exciting times, but these are very dodgy times. These are dicey times. I didn't kill Kaylee Anthony. Listen, when I was a young man, you really had only two options in this world. First one was you could become a mechanic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when I see a guy working on my motor vehicle, I think to myself, you're my bitch. The other option you can do is making bank through illegal means. And what that may mean could be you're dealing drugs, because a lot of people, especially nowadays, they have debilitating addictions to heroin. Back when I was a young man, it just used to be the pot. You'd smoke the pot, your life would fall apart immediately. You'd have to rely on that pot just to find a reason to live. For me personally, I was never one for drugs. I did a little bit of crystal meth. I like to stay clean. I like to keep my blood fresh. That just was not going to be a road I was going to go down. And so the only other option I had was robbing banks. Kind of like the town. We would go through Charleston, and it would be me and my buddy Jem, and we would hang out on the street corner. We'd talk in our Boston accents to one another, and a lot of, in Charleston, there's a lot of these people that live around there that come in from like Brooklyn or Washington or Minnesota, and they don't even understand what the fuck you're talking about. You can talk about how you're gonna score some cool threads at the jewelry store. Nobody's gonna bat an eye. What I have to tell you all is that if you're ever to rob a bank, you gotta do it the right way. I had to wrangle up a crew of men that had particular qualities about themselves that would aid in my mission of taking down this particular bank, the First Bank of Canton. Now, the First Bank of Canton was kind of on its way out. It was one of those local mom-and-pop banks that was hoarding everybody's money, robbing the town of its resources, acting as a financial vampire of sorts. I had gotten the word because I was friends with the security guard there, and Kenny, he's telling me they're putting in $400,000 unmarked bills next Saturday. I'm not one to advocate for crime, and I don't want to tell you what to do, but if you got any ideas, now's the time to execute them. And so already my Eddie Haskell instincts are kicking in, and I'm trying to conjure up in my head, who do I know that will have these particular traits that will aid in the mission that I am already unfolding in my head? The first guy that comes to mind is this fellow Jake. And Jake is somebody who I used to personally nickname Johnny Bruiser. And Jake, Johnny Bruiser, to me, in my head, would always be the kind of guy who you didn't want to mess with. He'd be polite, he'd show up at your birthday party in a nice suit and tie, and then if things got out of line, he would handle things, and you did not want to, You didn't, you know, you never wanted to crush this boy right here. The second guy that came to mind was this fellow that I had actually grown up with in childhood, named Speed. He was the getaway driver for Whitey Bulger back in the late 1980s. Speed would just speed around the corner. Police don't even know where the hell they are. The third guy's name was Corky, and Corky was probably one of the best salesmen to come out of New Jersey. And Corky, you know, this guy, he could sell you your mother's buttons. This man was skilled. And so I knew that I had to have Corky go into the bank, pass the bank teller a note that would say something like, "You're beautiful. I want to take you out on a date. By the way, I got a gun. Give me all the money or else I'm going to start popping skulls." And he would be able to pull that off because he's charming, so the girl wouldn't find that threatening. She'd be thinking about the date. Meanwhile, you know, he's bagging all this money. Last but not least, we had to outsource this last role to somebody really without a country of origin. A world traveler, if you will, Hans.
We can all live on each other's houses freely because it's just 4 walls. That if I have 4 walls, I should be able to offer you my 4 walls so that you can live with me. Please, anyone that needs a home.
You hear stories about Hans. They're almost always true. Hans is a dark guy. Hans is really scary. You never want to go sit down at a bar with Hans and have him sip a few drinks because all of a sudden you're feeling PTSD over the things that he's telling you. Now Hans, we gave the nickname the load blower, and this was because you know, it's kind of like how you give a big guy the nickname Tiny, you know, the big giant bouncer at the club. His nickname is Small Man. We all decided this is going to be his name because he just refused to jerk off. He thought it was going to like increase his manhood. He'd start hitting on babes at the club, but really what it just did was give him an early diagnosis of prostate cancer. You know, we like to rag on him a lot. You know, it was a kind of a fun thing. We would try to make him, you know, jerk us off to try and like all calm ourselves down because we're like animals. He would come in and he'd start, you know, giving everybody, you know, friendly, I don't want to call them hand jobs. Then it sounds like a sexual thing, and that's gross. But Hans, you know, you could call him Hands. We all show up at the bank, right? And we got disguises in our backpacks, and I'm gonna be the shark, and I'm the shark man because, you know, I love the show Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban, he has a habit of just going right off, kind of like roid rage. Just certain things will trigger him, and he will get really upset for no reason. It's kind of peculiar, you know. That guy has a lot of power. I'd watch out for him. Here's the big roadblock that got immediately in our way. Corky decided not to show up. Corky was in his hotel room. Corky, unfortunately, and this is really sad, breaks my heart to have to, you know, regale this. Corky hung himself on his doorknob, David Carradine style. Now, I don't know what he was doing to himself while it happened. So we had to go into this operation with only 4 men instead of the estimated 5, including yours truly, LowRes, or as I like to call myself, classic LowRes. We go in there and we're breaking things up like gangbusters. This old manager, I'm saying, you get me a coffee pot full of piss right now, or everybody's getting killed. And he doesn't even know how to comprehend that. I'm looking at Hans, and Hans is just the creepiest man you've ever seen. Hans, I'm starting to think Hans is going rogue. He's standing in the corner of the room. He's got his hands just clasped down at his waist, and he's like, just smiling. Like some kind of sick freak. I couldn't believe it. We're trying to rob the bank. We're trying to get the $400,000. Hans, he's just standing around smiling, holding his hands. I'm looking at Speed, and I'm like, something bad is about to happen. We don't know what the hell we just got ourselves into. Speed starts to panic. He's going, Hans, what are you doing? Hans, stop, Hans. Leave him alone, Hans. Speed loses it. He starts screaming in Hans's face. He's trying to get him into a chokehold. Hans is just smiling as Speed chokes him. And, you know, eventually, something like 120 seconds pass, and Hans, you know, blacks out from the strangulation and dies. He doesn't even fight it. He just lets Speed kill him. And, you know, so then there were 3. And oh, and then there were 3. And so it was me, Jake, and Speed. And Jake's got all the money. And all of a sudden, I noticed a glimmer in his eye, like, I'm getting away from these 2. $400,000 divided by 3 is suddenly going to become $400,000 just for me. I'm looking at Jake, and Speed is looking at Jake. And we can both pick up on something in the air. And he's looking back at us, and he's going, "What's happening, guys? What's going on? Why are you looking at me like that? What's happening? Hey, remember What's Happening, the sitcom? With Rerun?" And I'm looking at Jake, and I'm just like, "What are you talking about? The police are about to show up." Speed, he gives me that look, and I give him the look back, and he has to kill Jake, because Jake just could not be trusted. All of a sudden, Speed's running for the bag. And I'm thinking to myself, we haven't even sat down and discussed who's going to take the bag next. I can't trust Speed. I go over to Speed, and I brought into the bank with me this little, you know, how they give you the little knife in the Boy Scouts that can also like clip your toenails and uncork a bottle of wine. I take that, and I take the corkscrew, and I go, "Hey, buddy, heads up," and I cut his head off with it. And it was a clean cut. There was no blood at all. His head topples off and into the bag. I'm thinking to myself, this was a hexed job. And I grabbed the bag, and all of a sudden, I'm getting the fudge out of there. I don't like to swear on these videos. I grabbed the bag, and I yank his head out of there. And I said, "See you in hell." I head on out, and then it hits me. Corky had the plane tickets. I have nowhere to go. But then I remember, I got $400,000. I can go stay at the Holiday Inn. Sometimes I'll lay in my bed at night, just feeling my own body to make sure that I'm alive, that I wasn't the one who died that day at the bank, that I'm not the ghost wandering the United States, this particular plane of reality, and the joke's on me.
Lord Satan, from the treacherous and the violent. Oh, Satan, spirit of the earth, God of liberty, open wide the gates of hell and come forth from the abyss by these names.